Okay, and thank you everyone. And I want to welcome everyone today to the Grief at Home and in the Workplace webinar with myself, Peggy Green, the grief specialist. And so what we'll be doing today is I'll be talking a little bit about my story, and then I will be sharing a little bit more about how you can help facilitate someone who you know in the workplace that is going through their own grief. Then I'll be covering some of the questions that have been submitted regarding how you respond to people either as the griever or the lost traveler yourself. And then I'll wrap it up with an opportunity to reach out for a 45-minute consultation with me while you are on this journey. So again, thank you, and we are ready to roll. Okay, so today I want to thank you for your registration. And when I asked the questions, there were some short survey questions on there, and one of those was, have you personally experienced a loss of a friend or family member or a coworker? And 100% of those people who are registered and responded said yes, that they have experienced that. Then when I asked the question is, have you had somebody at work? Have you lost somebody who has been at your workplace? And again, 100% of the people responded yes. And so today, I really feel that there is such a need to help colleagues to support each other as they're going through this journey. It is a difficult journey, and we have become used to not knowing what to say and to do. So with that, I want to say that grief is a journey. It's not just a short trip. It doesn't start, it doesn't stop. It's a forever journey. A journey is something that continues on forever and ever. And sometimes there's roller coasters where it goes up and down, and things get better, they get worse, but it is definitely a journey. And you never get over it, but you actually have the opportunity to move through it and find that you can have light and hope and peace some point in that journey. And so that's really where you have the choice to be able to do that. And so I'm here to support you both as the lost traveler and as the person supporting somebody with that. So I've muted everyone. I'm going to share the impact of grief that it has, a little bit about me, dive into the meat of the webinar, which is how to support your employees through time, finances, emotions, and words. Then I will go ahead and address those questions from the registration and wrap it up. So I want to share a little bit about how grief impacts us personally. It can really cause so much anxiety that it gives us the inability to focus and to function. It can impact our health with the stress of all the things that need to be done and having our heart broken. We may not sleep, we may not be able to function, may not be able to talk, we may gain weight, we may overeat. It's impacts us emotionally. When our grief comes, it can come in waves, and we never know when it's going to happen. And the physical components, like I mentioned, we may even get sick more often. We may also experience more joint pain, or grief is held in our lungs, and we can even experience grief through coughs and bronchitis in our lungs. And so this is an opportunity to go ahead and understand how that impacts us, okay? And when it comes to it, grief also impacts us in work and at home. At work, we're unable to perform because you can't focus, and you have too many interruptions, and you may still be dealing with the things that have come up since your loved one passed away. And so this is so hard for us to be able to do, and because so many times we feel like we have to go back to work rather quickly. And then we may need more time to put things in order. And there's this expectation, and I find it so much more because we don't have the rites of passage for this, or the rituals that have so associated with other countries that I feel that we just don't give ourselves enough time to grieve. In the workforce, because Americans are like, the harder you work, the more you get, and we get so caught up in that we forget to live in the moment and really be able to take that time out to actually help ourselves grieve. And others expect us to get over it and get back to normal. And that happens in both the personal and the professional arenas, which is so difficult because, as I mentioned earlier, grief is a journey. It doesn't end. So I wanted to share a little bit about my story with you and how I come to you with an experience and expertise in being able to process and work through this. So I have experienced multiple losses. I had a child pass away when she was only 9 months old. Courtney passed away in 1991. And then another child passed away in 2018. And that is how this book has actually come about. And why I'm reaching out and helping others with this is because I feel that there is a need to help others in this loss journey and as we've traveled. And I've also experienced other family losses. My father passed away 21 years ago, my sister 11 years ago, and more recently, my mom passed away 4 years ago. And so I have learned from my first loss of Courtney to my more recent one of my son, Connor, I've pulled together some multiple tools which have enabled me to be able to make it through on this journey. I said, I don't get over it. I still grieve. It will be a forever process. So I really started processing a lot of this through journaling, and journaling in a notebook, and also journaling in through Facebook. And I found that very comforting because I got a lot of support through Facebook because I was sharing how I was feeling, what was bothering me, and really being true and vulnerable with my heart. And so with that, I was encouraged to go ahead and write a book. And I really pondered that. And about 3 months after my son passed away, I said, excuse me, that yes, I think that writing a book would be a good idea, but also not in that first year, because I knew from my previous experience that I would not be suited to be able to write a book at that time. So I waited for 13 months before I wrote the book, Life After Child Loss, The Mother's Survival Guide to Cope and Find Joy. And I wrote that one because I knew that there was this need to help others to be able to work through their losses. And so I am an author of that book, Life After Child Loss. I'm a health and wellness enthusiast who has actually turned to helping others with their grief, because I found that through the Facebook and now through my book that I've been able to help others. And so I started grief coaching, utilizing the tools and the resources that I gained over the past 29 years. So it's been quite the experience. And I live and reside in Highlands Ranch, Colorado with my 2 grown girls, a almost 4-month grandson, 2 dogs, and a cat. And no partridge in a pear tree, but I do really enjoy having family and pets with me. So along with that, in my story, I really had to evaluate what were my next steps. Now that I am the matriarch of my family, and that I have 2 grown daughters and a niece and a grandson that I want to leave a legacy for, I decided I wanted to have a purpose in my life. And so my family is a huge purpose. You know, they're the ones that I live for on a day-to-day basis, that I can impact and I can see them and love on them. But also I found that I had this purpose to help others. Walking the journey of child loss is very lonely, or it's uncharted for so many people in that area in which we don't have that experience and expertise. And so even though I've experienced the book is about child loss, it applies to other losses and other grief that we experience. And so take these things and you can apply them to any situation. So grief in the workplace. And I know a lot of you are entrepreneurs and small business owners. And so we typically find that grief in the workplace is something that is an expectation that you get 3 days off, paid days off, or maybe 4 days paid off. And then the expectation is that you come back to work and you perform like you did before you experienced this loss. And if you've experienced loss, like I said, many of us have, you know that that's not the case. And so it makes it so difficult for us to be able to perform. In the United States, it's common to be able to, you know, in some places even have that law that you can have that amount of time off, but it's not something that really supports us. And so I want to let you know that as an employer, whether a small business owner, that you can support employees or friends and family through these next tools and recommendations that I'm offering. So some of them apply to what you're doing now, some of them don't, but keep that in mind that they can also be shared with others. So grief in the workplace is that we want to be able to offer to employees time, the gift of time. And with that, we talk about the gift of time in the flexibility of when they return to work. And again, this is personal business decisions on how much time you can give them and still be able to pay them. And it's working with the employee who is experiencing their loss so that they can actually still work, feel that they've got some income coming in, because they don't want to have that thrown on top of them, the fact that they're worried about finances and then also going through the grieving process. So in what you can do, if there is that gift of time, you know, if you can lighten their load slightly, that's very helpful. And either yourself take up a little bit of the responsibilities or share those responsibilities with somebody else, and understanding that that will indeed help them to heal. And in the long run, is going to bring about their healing, and that they're going to be much more able to return to work in a good place. Understand, though, that there is no time limit on grief. I mean, mine has been 29 years and 18 months and many in between, and I still grieve for my first child. I still cry for Courtney, and I never know when it's going to happen, but there's no time limit, and something may trigger it. And so even though a person may return to work, you may not realize that there's something that has triggered them or has made them especially sad, creating some different emotions. And if it's possible, give that employee extra time off. And when I talk about this, I want you to even think about it for yourself. Is, you know, are you expecting yourself to go back to work in 3 to 4 days? Or do you need some extra time off because you don't understand how this can impact you? And to be able to be in a good place mentally is important in taking extra time off. So, you know, if that requires you going in and having a conversation either with your employer or even with yourself as being self-employed, then that's something you want to go ahead and take into consideration, is taking time off. And then, you know, if you're an employer, then reassuring the person, the lost traveler, that they have a job. Now you can have some expectations laid out and say, you know, this is what we're expecting, but then it also gives that person something to work with and know where they are in their grief process and what you are expecting as an employee and employer for them to continue to work with you. So it's really having that conversation and being open to working out a solution with them. Now, the next one that we can talk about is supporting through finances. And in this day and age, finances are the last thing the employee wants to worry about. And so you can be creative in how you're helping them with that. And if it's a flex schedule or that they're getting their time in, you know, later in the week, or whatever that can do, or even giving them a job that doesn't require as much. One of the things that you may or may not be able to do, and that might even be able to offer to pay a bill. And, it could be something, as simple as their Netflix account, or it could be their car payment, or you bring together a group of people maybe to pay for a mortgage payment to really help them in a time. Grief, we know, or loss and death and the expenses associated with it are very expensive. So we want to make sure that, this person is feeling like they've got life after this, that it can happen to them. Our next thing I want to focus on is emotional support. And this is where we start to get a little bit deeper, where we're connecting with that person who is experiencing their loss. And what this is listening. Listening is the biggest thing as a lost traveler, is to have somebody just be willing to listen. Not that we're expecting you to solve our problems. We're just asking you to listen. I have one friend that I call, and I just call her up and say, I don't need anything but for you to listen. And I take it to the next step, and I said, I just need you to listen to me cry. Because distance has us separated, and so that's all she does is listen to me cry. And as I work through that, then I can finally be able to pull myself together and say, okay, now let's talk. This is what's triggered me. So listening is such a high value thing. Ask your friends, your family, your employees, how much they want to share. There's details that they may or may not want to be shared with others, and maybe they're just divulging them with you because you are that listening ear. So don't take it for granted that with what they share is something that they want everybody to know. So ask them. You might even be the point of contact that they can share information with you, and then you can disseminate the information. Offering that is huge, because when we have so many people that we need to get that information to, it's not something typically we want to have to repeat. So offering to be that point of contact for them as well. Honoring what they share. Like I said, just make sure that you are not actually sharing information that they don't want. And then the last one, big area that you can support them is through words. And we'll be spending a little bit more time on this because I think that's where so many people struggle. Death, especially the death of a child, is like an elephant in the room, and nobody wants to talk about it. But as the griever, I can tell you, I want to talk about my children. Now, I also want to talk about my sister and my parents. And so getting rid of that elephant in the room is important. So many times people don't know what to say, and they respond with silence. Silence is definitely that moment of confusion when nobody knows what to do and nobody knows what to say. And it can be interpreted as, well, I don't care because I'm being silent. The other thing is that if you're talking about the person who has passed, what can happen with that too is others just don't know what to say. Here we don't have any real rituals, and we fumble on our words because we don't connect with those who are grieving, or we never recognized it for ourselves. But there are certain words that we can say that will help us as well. And then people are afraid to say the wrong thing. Have you been afraid to say the wrong thing to somebody, or as a person who's experienced your own grief, have you received something that you couldn't believe that somebody said? I think that those who are in conversations have the right intentions, and it's coming from their heart, but we've never shared, we've never learned how to actually grieve and to help others. So I wanted to share some questions that came up in through the registration or comments and how those came up. And so I want to thank you everyone for answering those questions and submitting them and sharing them. So this one, the question is, what has someone said to you that you didn't know how to respond to? And that is, how can I help? And that would be from somebody who's asking, how can I help you through your loss and through your grief? And this is not a time as a lost traveler to be humble and to have our pride get in the way. This is a time, if somebody's offering to help, then tell them what you need. It's simple, and even if it's like, go get my groceries, come sit with me, respond to that and be honest and say, yes, these are the things that you can help me with. Another one that came up is, what is, if you were wondering if you said was the right thing. And so one said, my dear friend lost her husband recently, and that they said so many things, but central message is that I am here for you. And that is definitely a plus in being able to tell them that you are there for them. And it is important, though, to become one of those people, if you really want to be there for them, being one of those people who I consider to be the tribe in the inner circle. Though one of those people that they can call and count on you. You could be a crying friend or a friend that in the middle of the night they can call and say that they're sad. If you're really there for them, really make sure that you are. And again, my condolences to you and the family. Please let me know if there's anything you need. And with that, as a lost traveler, as an employee who doesn't know what they need, they may not be open to asking for that help. And that's where you can step in and say, you know what, I can do this for you, and just volunteer. And what has someone said to you that you didn't know how to respond to? And this one goes back to that expectation of people thinking that after 3 or 4 days that we're okay and we're back to normal. And this one is that one friend wanted to meet less than a week after they found out that there was a death in the family. And that to me is really like not even inquiring from the lost traveler if they are ready to resume business. And I think that would have been more appropriate to preface that question with, I acknowledge that you've had a recent loss in your family. Are you up and running? Do you feel like, coming and let's meeting? Or even you can turn that meeting into one of support. So that's a great way that you can do things. Other thing that was said was, why can't I find the obituary? And I tell you, that is something that would be hard to answer. And really, to me, it's the person who's asking that question could even turn that around to say, I really want to acknowledge your loss, your family member, and support you by coming to the service or supporting, sending flowers or whatever, that they can say that and then say, where are the details for the obituary? Coming at it with their heart and telling them what you were thinking. And one of those is like, how did this happen? Tell you what, that is one that will strike a person's heart and cause us to go into a tailspin. And so that's not the type of question that somebody should be asking. And so if somebody asks you that, and you can really just honestly respond and say, that's something that I do not feel comfortable answering. I know initially it's one of those that we want to just say, why are you even asking that? You can more appropriately say, that's something I'm really not comfortable with sharing. And when somebody shares with you what's going on in their life, what's happened is that somebody has, they didn't say anything. And really what you can do is say, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry that this happened. So those are some of the questions that we had come up here. And then what I wanted to do today too is that I have something with 21 days, or not 21 days, pardon me, 21 things to say, to not to say, or do to a grieving parent or somebody else is in grief. So really, let's think about some of those questions. And one that comes up is like, how are you doing? Well, that is a loaded question. A better question to ask is, how are you doing today? How are you doing in this moment? Because if you ask somebody, how are they doing, then that's the big picture, and they're in grief. They may be denial, they may be angry, they may be super sad, but that day they might be able to face the emotions that they have, and you can ask, and they could say, you know what, I'm having a good day today. And you can then have more questions. What's making this a good day? So really, how are you doing today is much more specific. Okay. Some of the other things that we don't want to say is, you can have more children. Okay. To a grieving parent, we don't want more children. We want the child that has passed. Or you're young, you can get married again. Those are not the things that you want to say. So I want to make sure that that's something that we eliminate from our vocabulary. And then I want to add a couple things that I've touched upon on things that you can do to help. So I mentioned when you say, I want to support you, offer to take dinner. And I mean, just take it. You may need to find out if they have any restrictions, but take dinner to them and say, you know what, I'm just going to bring this to your door at 10 o'clock in the morning. And really, you don't need to open the door. I'm going to leave it. You can grab it when you're ready and I can take off. Or you can find out from that person if they just need somebody to be with them, to be present. You can just sit and listen. And in this day and age, I'm going to tell you to get rid of the cell phones. Don't even take it in with you because it's rude and it's a distraction when somebody's pouring out their heart to you. So go and listen. And you can run errands for them. You can go to the grocery store. You can get their car washed. You can do multiple things. You can go in and clean the house for them and just take over in taking responsibility and stepping up and how you can help them. So this is this is just a few of the things of the 21 things that you can say and do to help others, and the things not to say as well. So what I would like to do is wrap it up and say thank you for joining me today. And my gift to you is I will send you the 21 things to say, not say, and do for the grieving parents. And then along with that, I wanted to offer to you, if you would be interested in attending or coming and talking with me for your grief. And all of you indicated that you have experienced grief. So schedule a 45-minute discovery session with me. You can either follow this link, screenshot it, or you can email me at Peggy.griefrecovery@gmail.com. And I want to say thank you with that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing our screen and stop recording. And then what we will do is I'm going to open it up for questions.